Hey YouTube, how's it going? I'm here with another book review, and this time I'm reviewing Mark Z. Danielewski's House of Leaves. Now, this book is a bit hard to review because it's very experimental, and I definitely didn't get 100% of what was going on because of how dense it is with, obscure references to, ancient classic, literature, mythology, and all the different footnotes that refer to these obscure, fictional or actually real books that Danielewski kind of uses as a maybe as a satire of academic um, writing. But as a whole, I think the if you separate the two or three different self-contained narratives in the book, it's fairly easy to follow and review. Um, I really like this book, and I would like to try to review it as straightforwardly as possible, and just give my own thoughts about why I liked it and what parts of it I didn't like. So this book is a very experimental book that divided into maybe two different narratives that kind of are involved in that the first character, the first main character is Johnny Truant, is this tattoo artist who finds a manuscript left by an old man, an old blind man who died alone in his apartment. And his manuscript is this, you know, uh, it's this book on, it's just a manuscript about the life of this photographer, William Davidson, and his attempt to reconnect with his family by buying a house in Virginia, so that he could connect with them because his job as a photojournalist is taking him around the world and doesn't get to spend a lot of time with his family, Karen, and his two kids, Chad and Daisy. Um, and it starts off like a very weird academic kind of narrative of what's kind of not very academic story. It starts with like first chapter. While enthusiasts and detractors will continue to empty entire dictionaries, attempting to describe or deride it, authenticity still remains the word most likely to stir debate. I mean, that's a very academic way of starting a story like this, but that's because the manuscript left by the old blind man who died, called Zampano in the story, it's basically trying to interpret this movie that Davidson, this fictional photographer in Johnny Truant's universe, it's trying to interpret this movie left by him, which is his attempts of trying to record the weird, goings on, the weird physical, like the weird inconsistencies of like laws of physics of the laws of physics in his house, because one of the earliest pieces of film mentioned in the book, in the Davidson record, is this 5 minute, the 5.5 minute hallway where Davidson takes a videotape recorder, goes into a hallway that's, when you look at it from the outside of the house, is supposed to just lead to nowhere because there's like a garden, uh, you know, where the hallway is. But when you step in from inside and open the door, you see what looks like an endless hallway. And I mean, that piqued my interest when I first read it, but I kept putting the book down over the years because it's just really annoying, this academic style, which I think was supposed to be kind of like a critique or satire on like this overly academic way of writing in either like academia or journalism, or like it's like a self-conscious way of trying to show how futile it is to try to explain phenomena that's either like supernatural or just inexplicable. So story is just basically about Johnny Truant, this tattoo artist who's found this manuscript that talks about the life and the film shot by Will Davidson and his relationship with his family and how it's falling apart because of his commitment to his work and craft as a photographer, and how the relationship has been strained, since they met, and how they're trying to commit together as a loving couple, and put their differences aside and just try to live a normal life. The main issue is that because a house has this, I don't know what do you call this, like if you have a hallway that extends into nowhere, like it's like a freak of, I don't know, like because the house has this weird quirk. I mean, that's an understatement. Because the house breaks the laws of physics, Davidson as a photographer gets to do these dangerous explorations into that unknown, and it's just drawing the couple apart even further. So it's as if Davidson never really left, danger. As if he's never left his job. He still wants to explore the house, dangerous part of that house that leads to nowhere, and he eventually does. And I don't want to give everything else away. What happens throughout in the end, I think, if anything, it's not knowing what's going to happen later that made me want to read it, and I think it's what would probably drive readers who are not used to this kind of experimental prose and structure of the book. It's what will motivate them to read later on. So the more Davidson wants to explore the physical anomalies of the house, the more strained his relationship with his wife, and the more traumatized the kids are from the the happenings around the house, because there's this weird way where Danielewski explains that the more Davidson and another crew go in to kind of explore the hallway, and they find a stairway, and for some reason the hallway and the whole interior physics of it is different for everyone who enters it, because it really depends on one's internal state. If you're someone that's really scared of the dark and really it's the first time you go in there, it's physically longer than when you go there a second time and you're not as scared. But if you're someone that's usually scared of exploring, it's much more physically demanding to go through because it expands corresponding to your inner mental state. But if you're someone that's like very fearless and you've been, you're used to kind of facing your fears and you just like exploring, it kind of becomes much easier and shorter to traverse. The house eventually kind of plays a part in kind of not just straining the relationship between the couple, Davidson, and Karen, but kind of also scares the kids because they hear noises, and then for some reason the kids are more perceptive about the sinister nature of the house than the adults, because they hear noises that don't really come from anywhere, but they actually come from the goings on of the almost infinite piece of space of the hallway, which ends up, it's difficult to even imagine because it's almost like a infinite space that Danielewski kind of guides you through, as if he's what was the name of that angel in the Inferno? Virgil, I think it's Virgil. Yeah, as if he's Virgil and he's guiding you through uh, this. I don't know if you want to call it hell or purgatory, of like this different layers of space, which is just emptiness. And a lot of themes, I feel like a lot of themes are kind of explored about the nature of um, home, of like what it means to have a house, what it means to settle, what it means to build a family or a community, and also what it means to explore the dangers of the unknown. Because on one hand, I think this is me being overly interpretive, even though like this isn't the criticisms Danielewski might have against people who want to overly interpret, weird phenomena or pieces of art. I think it's just that there is like this tension maybe like between like people, and that on one hand human beings want to settle somewhere, grow and nurture, take care of each other, as hunter-gatherer societies to maybe more, agricultural to modern societies. We all kind of had a tendency of wanting to settle down somewhere and, uh, grow some roots. But on the other hand, we always want to explore and go into the unknown, whether it's new, fresh territory when we're like nomadic tribes are colonizing new lands, or even in like modern times, it's like when we want to explore space, the limits of what human beings can explore. That could not just be space, but it could be knowledge, or the limits of human, you know, understanding. I think the house in itself, and this is obvious from the footnotes and some of the I don't know what you call it, like the blurbs, is that it kind of represents, it's kind of like the white whale in Moby Dick. It says that one of the blurbs that it kind of represents the kind of unknown, infinite, or nature, and that it's something we keep trying to conquer and understand, but that keeps defying understanding, or human conquering. It's also like our tendency to want to make ourselves at home in the world, not realizing that there is always this unknown, and it's always this thing that we don't have control over, that we can't, through technology or understanding, have any control over that. We always fear it, because people are always afraid of what is beyond comprehension. It's like the best horror movies, for example, are those where you don't even see the monster. You just know that there's something going on messing with the character's mind, and people are losing their shit because they're afraid, and because they don't know anything about the thing that's after them. Um, I mean, even in, it's also kind of hinted at in the beginning, where like in the very first paragraph of chapter one of the Davidson records. In fact, this leading obsession to validate or invalidate the reels of tapes invariably brings up a collateral and more general concern whether or not, with the advent of digital technology, image has forsaken its once unimpeachable hold on the truth. Now, I kind of glossed over that paragraph. There's several times I've tried to read it, but I think that's like one of the main themes of the book, and that we live in an age right now, 21st century. This book was published in 2000. We live in an age where like we have so much, we have a lot of access to video and photography. People today could take pictures and videos using their phones instead of having to buy the latest best equipment. It's not just like everybody has access to good cameras that can capture things. It's that it doesn't take so much preparation to set up an advanced equipment to take pictures, but there are still things that kind of I mean, just because we can take a picture of something or record something doesn't mean we know that it's true. Or we live in an age where like we're kind of constantly flooded with all this information of like video and audio, but like we still don't know what's true. Look at the 2016 American elections, like how fake news and interference with Russian, the Russian interference, like mess with people's idea of what was right and wrong, and all these conspiracy theories. You have all this video, audio, and you have all this text all on the internet, and yet people don't know what's misinformation and what's real information. So, like, one of the first paragraphs of the book actually points to this, in that people in the fictional manuscript written by Zalpanio don't know whether the Davidson record is a hoax or is a real, recording of this paranormal activity going on in the house. And so back in 2000, like Danielewski, as a postmodern writer, was bringing up this idea, like, just because we have this, these advances in technology, just because we can take pictures and document all these things in the world, all these different phenomena, whether it's nature, things happen around the world, and politics and the news, or anything. Doesn't mean that we know if it's fabricated or not. The more advanced technology is, not only do we have a better way and more efficient way to validate pictures, but it also becomes easier to fabricate pictures, like with Photoshop, and it's this idea of not knowing what's true, and I would say this is like one of the main points of the book. If it can go on and on because there's just a lot to talk about. I mean, look at the typography of the book. It's yeah, it's kind of crazy. There's one thing I do want to mention before we go trying to finish reading this is that as Davidson and some of the crew that go down to investigate the hallway, and they feel their own sense of dread and claustrophobia exploring the hallway and the different branches of the hallway. The text kind of also gets condensed into parts of the page where the reader kind of feels disoriented in a way that's similar. Like, I mean, you don't really feel claustrophobia, you don't really feel the same fear as they do, but the speed at which you read of a page with a full text and then switching it to a page where it's just a few lines at the bottom or the top or diagonally, it is disorienting in a way in which you're kind of get a more sense of you get a better feel of what they're going through. And finally, I do want to talk about Johnny Truant's narrative, which is maybe the more depressing narrative as far as I could imagine. He is a tattoo artist, like I said, and he kind of becomes obsessed with a text with a Davidson record left by Zampano. That like you see him adding comments throughout the text, and you get the impression that like he's adding his own narrative about his own life, his own biography, and it seems like an homage to Nabokov's Pale Fire, where this I don't know, crazy academic starts commentating on one of his neighbor's big poems before he died, and eventually starts talking about himself and how he's like a refugee from a country that's going through a war or something. So anyway, it becomes apparent that Truman is losing his mind, and it's not clear whether it's because all the drugs he's taking because of the insomnia, and trying to numb himself from his own emotional pain because of the shitty life he's been through as a kid to where he is now, and it's not clear whether it's because of that or the genetic predisposition he has because his mom is in a what do you call, I don't want to call it an insane asylum, like but like a yeah, it's like an asylum for mentally ill patients, and it's not clear if it's because of those factors that he's losing his mind or because he's actually reading the Davidson record and it's just messing with him, because it does say that there are some academics who have studied the Davidson record or become more obsessed with it to the point where they commit suicide or just become or have mental breakdowns. And I was kind of scared because I know this was all fiction, but my sleep schedule got messed up pretty bad, more than usual, during COVID times, as I was reading this, because I guess I felt like I don't know, kind of obsessed about where it was going, even though it was a pain in the ass to read the book with different formats. Um, I do want to comment that Danielewski is a very talented writer and that he could have written a more conventional book that didn't have all this, topographical uh, structure, like this weird, uh, setting of text in the book. He could have written like a book like Stoner or To Kill a Mockingbird or something like Faulkner, and just become known as a avant-garde writer who can really pull the heartstrings, because there's a lot of heartbreak in this book. I feel Danielewski was expressing his own heartache from losing his father, um, which was like he started writing this book after his father died, and in one of his interviews he said that he lost two serious relationships working hard on this book, and he must have been in a very strange or really bad time in his life as he was writing this, because there was like this sense of not just loneliness, but I mean, this sense of not feeling loved and of feeling alone and abandoned. Yeah, abandoned mostly. And in this book, I feel this in Johnny Truant a lot, and I don't know to what extent Danielewski is kind of incorporating parts of himself into this character. And I was like, I hope he did nowhere near as much drugs as Truant. And there is this same feeling in Davidson, in that Davidson spent so much time at work that he doesn't know how to take care of those around him, with his brother Tom or his wife Karen. And Karen is a successful artist, but that God, like, yeah, her past is kind of really messed up too. Yeah, I'd rather you guys read it. I don't want to or anything. And it's there are moments in the book where Danielewski writes so well and focuses on these tender moments that these characters are either spilling out their heart and guts of what they feel. It makes me feel like this is not just a work of experimental fiction that is supposed to do away with convention and show you what, new way of telling a story, or a way to challenge the idea of narrative. It's also a book about people that kind of struggle with with the idea of feeling at home in the world, and no pun intended, house of leaves. There are a lot of themes I just couldn't penetrate my own analysis. I just felt that I knew it had to do with people trying to find a place to live with each other in an intimate setting. And I do feel that this was a book that was written, Danielewski was young, when he was just figuring out who he was, trying to make enough money to get by and feel at home in his world. I did cry at some of the passages that showed the love Karen and Davidson had for each other, but that couldn't express because of their emotional turmoil, because of their past. It is one of the better books I've read, but it's just hard to compare it with like normal books or books that are amazing, like War and Peace and Stoner, uh, and Death and the Dervish. It's hard to compare it with that and say it's as good, because it's so different in what it gives to you as a reader. I would recommend it, but if you're a literary purist again, take it with a pinch of salt. Like, don't buy the book. Like, rent it from a library, like, borrow it from a friend, or just check out an ebook. But to be honest, this is one of those books that an ebook, you're kind of cheating yourself, because you need to flip it around and go back to the footnotes, and kind of like Infinite Jest and all these other books where you have to play with a book physically and not just textually. So I hope I did this book justice. Let me know what you guys think. And yeah, happy reading.